patients going through this multi-hour surgeries, sometimes up to 8 hours, we're sending him home with pretty much nothing and maybe a good luck kind of situation. So what do I do when I'm at home? How do I know I'm in trouble?
That gap in care is what bothered Medtronic veteran Jaeson Bang. So he founded Future Cardia to solve it.
Heart failure in general is more of a mechanical problem. So our goal is to be the first line of defense for those patients.
But his journey was defined by a critical lesson learned early in his career.
We had all these great features that the physician wanted it. We spent all this time and effort. Nobody wanted it.
This taught him the philosophy he lives by today.
My thing was, be straightforward, be direct, have the courage to say no, and have a courage to hear things that you don't want to hear.
When do you think commercialization will happen?
We're pushing really hard to do an FDA submission this year. If we do a great job, then we can get the clearance by middle of next year. The submission and the clearance is when things get very, very hot.
On today's episode around, I'm joined by Jaeson Bang, who's CEO of Future Cardia, a company that is shortly to commercialize and shake up the world of cardiac monitoring for heart failure patients. Jay, welcome to today's episode. So you and I have we were introduced by some industry colleagues, and through my time knowing you and understanding the market that you're entering, it seems like you have truly a disruptive product. A lot of folks like to throw around disruption of a product, but I really feel this really fits that definition. Now, what is the product designed to do? I understand it. We're sharing it for the audience here.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Joe. We're developing an implantable cardiac monitor that will record ECG and heart sounds and monitor atrial fibrillation and heart failure. So right now, the gold standard is to implant inside the heart in a cath lab procedure. So those devices are accurate, but complex and expensive and have a low adoption. So our goal is to be the first line of defense for those patients.
Well, thank you for sharing. But there's something unique you said there, which I don't see with the other technologies on the market, which is the heart sound. Can you share with us how do you correlate heart sound with the ECG? And why is that so much more effective than just a traditional ECG?
Yeah, the ECG is actually very important, especially for atrial fibrillation, where it is a disturbance in electrical conduction of the heart. So we need that for the electrical aspect of the heart. But heart failure in general is more of a mechanical problem. So we do have a wider QRS in some of the patients, but it's an inability of the heart to pump efficiently. And that is reflective of the heart sound, so the mechanical aspect of the heart. And by combining the ECG and the heart sound, it becomes a powerful tool. And this type of research has been done for many, many years. And even the predicate devices are working on that right now.
So a lot of your background has contributed to where you are today in the company, correct?
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about your background.
Yeah, so I was very fortunate. I started my career with Medtronic in the pacemakers and defibrillator division, sales. And I was very fortunate to have experience working in corporate side as well as in the field. And I loved it. It was one of the greatest opportunities I had and just loved that job. And then I moved to startup companies and same space, brain neuromodulations and structural heart. And that allowed me to get involved even deeper into the inner workings of the implantable devices, the regulatory, the engineering, executive team, and everything in between. So I was very fortunate to start my career in Medtronic and then moved on to startup companies where I was able to get involved in deeper aspect of the operation.
So really, this is like the next natural progression of your career, right? So you've done the sales, you've done the management, you've worked inside the company, and now you're in the driver's seat of a product that will potentially be a disruptor in this market. So whenever I speak to any CEO or any product developer, I always like to ask, what were the gaps in the cardiac care that the current standard of care did not address that your company is addressing?
Yeah. Actually, this bothered me a lot because in the previous companies, we were doing providing a life saving type of therapy device. So these patients are really sick. They have a limited options, and and then we have this very tough conversation with the patients, the family members, and the physicians of what the options are, and from good outcome all the way to really, really bad outcome. And patients going through this multi-hour surgeries, sometimes up to 8 hours, and in some cases multi-day surgeries, and many days in the hospital, and they come through this, and we're sending them home with pretty much nothing, and maybe a couple page instruction and good luck kind of situation. And that really worried me and bothered me a lot, and because the patients are not, they have all the help they can get in the hospital, right? They got the nurses, they got the doctors. At home, what do they have? A telephone. That's pretty much it. So I get these questions a lot. So what do I do when I'm at home? How do I know I'm in trouble? How do I know not to call? And none of us really had this solution for them. And same thing from the physicians. They're like, guys, we just did all this work for this patient. Now what? We just wait, So that worried me and bothered me, and I wanted to come up with some kind of solution for them when they are the most vulnerable, which is at home.
Well, you come at a good time here because anyone in the industry is aware that the ambulatory the patients in the ambulatory setting, and being able to monitor them and address any type of events much quicker and proactively, this fits into the entire, I call it the new age of medicine, right? It's all ambulatory based. They call it hospital at home. And it's about better patient care and being able to address any events before they actually occur. So it certainly fits to where healthcare is heading, the future of healthcare, right? So as we speak about the future, I always like to ask those who are on the episodes, what do you think the future of care looks like?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Well, let's keep it within the cardiac position where we're at here with your product.
Yeah. The physicians have it tough because now they're inundated with data that is not always correlate to an action. And from a patient's perspective, they have access to a lot of these data that also doesn't help them too much. I remember distinctly with hanging out with a physician, and he gets a call from a patient, and this one of those guys that does house calls. This is like a real doctor kind of guy. And the patient calls him and goes, "Hey, my Apple Watch tells me that I have an AFib." And he goes, "We know that. We've known that for several years." I said, "Okay, what do I do?" He says, "Are you still taking your medication?" "Yes, I am." "Well, then nothing. We're good to go. There's nothing that we can do that's different than what we've been doing for the past several years." So these are the kind of examples where patients are inundated with data that may or may not help them, and the physicians are cut in between trying to facilitate this information. So I don't know. It's a tough situation. We have to come up with some kind of streamlined, actionable data for the physician so they can act on it, and at the same time relieve that stress, take that burden off of patient. So a lot of advancements are happening right now, and only time will tell.
So what are some of the responses to physicians who you've introduced this new technology to? I know it's not FDA approved yet. You're going through that process now, and you're hopeful that we'll speak about that shortly. But what do some of the physicians that you introduce the technology to, what's their response?
Yeah, so before the response, the biggest complaint right now is that the wireless connection is not that strong. So we overcame that technology to make it far more efficient and more robust. The second complaint is the ECG quality is not as good. There's a lot of noise, and we can't quite tell what's going on, and we have to wait several weeks to figure this out. And during that time, patient could have some kind of event, and we don't know what's going on. So we improved that clarity of the device as well. Another big complaint is from an electrophysiology perspective, they got this very much controlled. But there are other physicians that still need these products, like interventional cardiologists and heart failure doctors. And they're saying, guys, these are my patients, a simple solution that I can provide them, but I can't because it's too complex. So I got to send this out to a different physician, EP, have them manage it, bring back the patient to me. So we made the user interface super simple, like one page instead of several hundred settings that the predicate devices have. So those are three things that we're addressing. The biggest complaints: the wireless connection, poor ECG quality, and complex usability. So we're taking care of that.
So, when we think about, and thank you for sharing that with us, when we think about product development, product development originates from complaints, which are essentially gaps in healthcare or gaps in the current product offering that's out there, right? So, when you think about young developers or folks who have interest in coming to market, what how'd you transition from sales management? Then you were you worked at the company internally. You've been part of a lot of the development of those products. How do you make the transition to now say, I'm going to develop a product, I'm coming to market, now I'm going to be in the driver's seat? Help us with that transition, because that is something that folks could really, that's what people want to hear. How did you get to where you are?
I'm still there, still working on it. But one thing that I really take pride in is customer discovery stage. I learned this early on, especially at Medtronic. We had all these great features that the physician wanted it. They wanted it. And we asked the patients, they're like, absolutely, I want it. I want it. Everybody wanted it. And when we spent all this time and effort bringing it to them, nobody wanted it. So that was really strange to me. And nobody would really give me a good reason as to why they don't want it. Later, I found out that the physician said, it's too complex. I don't want to be called at 2 a.m. by 50 different patients about this thing. And from a patient's perspective, yeah, but I want the doctor to take care of it. I don't want to take care of this at home by myself. I need somebody to tell me. And yeah, I want it, but that's not my responsibility. So this took many, many years of research and getting great positive responses from patients and physicians, only to find out that they really didn't want it. So those are the kind of things that I learned early on. So that helped me a lot. And something that I think many of us suffer from is that a lot of us move up, not because we're good, but because we're very good at managing up. The leaders that I work with are tremendous leaders, so people that I admire, but they also have people who are very good at saying yes to them, and that makes those guys move up. So we hear all this people who are not the best at it becomes a manager and kind of tank the system or hurt the company. So my thing was, be straightforward, be direct, have the courage to say no, and have a courage to hear things that you don't want to hear, and fix it. Instead of managing up constantly and trying to move up, trying to have only one customer in your portfolio. So that was my approach.
Well, you certainly have done some things right. You managed up very well, and you managed out, meaning you've transitioned out and you are now driving the development and the company formation of Future Cardia, which is shortly going to commercialize once the FDA is approved. Now, when you think about your roadmap that led you here, what are some of the barriers that you've had to overcome in order to find the success of where you're at today? If you think back, what are the top two barriers that you can address, you could share with us?
Yeah, so the funding is a big problem, and not just for me, but entire entrepreneurship. So that problem is not unique to me. Every single person, whether you're opening up a a restaurant or a MedTech startup or whatever, the funding is always a big issue. So you have to make that commitment. You have to be able to have the conviction to make that transition, from an employee to an employer situation. And then the leverage.
Well, Jay, before you leave that, I want to address that because through the relationships that we know here in the industry, I was told that you've been very successful in raising money from a wide array of different folks. So, what's been your philosophy engaging with either retail investors, institutional investors, family, friends? What's been your philosophy? How did you raise so much?
Oh, I didn't raise that much. It's a fraction of what.
Well, raised enough to get to where you are. I'm sorry.
In compared to a traditionally funded venture-backed startup companies, I have raised a fraction of it. That said, I have raised many times over what traditional entrepreneurs would do from an angel investor's perspective. So, and many of us, the listeners, know, you first raise from friends and families and yourself. And I did that. And I just extended it. And when you reach the maximum of friends and family and yourself, then you go into the institutional investment. So you want, how much can you raise from your inner circle? And my inner circle was I knew I could raise $5 to $8 million on my own just by reaching out to notable angel investors, physicians, and industry reps. And that's how it kind of snowballed. And then I did equity crowdfunding, and that also helped me to get to this point. So I was able to intentionally bypass the venture funding up to this point, allowing us to be super efficient, resourceful, and with lots of grit.
So when you made reference to grit, and it's something only a young entrepreneur or someone who's coming to market knows, is that you really have to spin your wheels and get to the goal line, and you need that grit to make it happen. I know you to be above board and transparent in every discussion we've had. So when you engage with a retail investor, institutional investor, really anyone looking to put their money in, what's your approach? How do you share with them? What's that inner fire that you share about Future Cardia that really gets them to say, you know what, something is here, we got to put some money in?
Yeah. I interviewed a lot of other entrepreneurs in the space about that. General consensus that they were not all that engaging. They found it to be a time-consuming matter. I didn't. I found it to be a hugely rewarding and grateful opportunity. So my goal was, I'll talk to anybody or everybody, and I'll treat them equally, whether you're writing a $300 check or a $1.5 million check. And that's what I did. So every investors that I have my personal number and my email address. And you email me, it is my duty to answer to you. Direct, transparent, clearly. You may not like to hear it, but that's the approach that I took. And that goes true for the guys who wrote $200,000-$300,000 all the way up to $1.5 million. They get the same treatment as anybody else would. So I think that it's not just I'm doing that to make myself look good, but that's how I believe. And I think there's entrepreneurs who would drive or fly to anywhere in the country to pitch to an angel group, right? We all would. Why can't you not do that for the guy who's willing to write a $300 check, right?
Good philosophy. It's a good philosophy. So the company has raised money. You're currently in a pre-FDA study, which you're now just getting the data put together, aggregated to submit. So share with us, where's the company now? When do you think or potentially think commercialization will happen?
That's a tough one. We have 3 milestones. ability to implant in human, which we achieved last year, in the tune of 39 patients. That's really, really high number. Compared to other implantable electronic companies, they would implant maybe 3 to 5, and they will still need about $30 to $50 million to get there. So we did 39 patients last year. So we're pushing really hard to do an FDA submission this year. And because we're class 2 510K device with 2 predicates, if we do a great job, then we can get the clearance by middle of next year. And as an industry, as an implantable world, the submission and the clearance or approval is when things get very, very hot. So we'll see. We'll see.
So good luck with you on that. Now, I know you're slowly turning your attention to the infrastructure needed for commercialization, and this is a completely different skill set needed by you and those that surround you to get this product to market. And you and I have had differences in looking at, and actually very good differences in looking at marketing and how to commercialize, not necessarily Future Cardia, but how you look at the marketing efforts needed to get any product to the end user, which is the customer and the patient. And we have, you have a very unique approach at that. So I'd love you to share with us what your thoughts are, and how should marketing, the new age of medical device marketing and sales, look?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different ways, but I know what doesn't work. I'm even then, I'm sure a lot of people will disagree and contest. Let's put a medical convention, for example. Do you think it work? I personally don't think it work at all. If you're a big corporate, you put those $250,000 booth, and then the next big corporate says, well, they got that one, so we're going to put one just like that next to it. And then the third one says, well, I'm going to do exactly the same thing next to it. And then all the startup companies are like, well, they're doing it, so we better do it. And then you put a smaller booth, $50,000 booth, and even a bunch of knick-knack companies are saying, well, everybody's there, so I'm going to put my table $5,000 and stay at a hostel and get it done, right? Yeah, it brings the doctors in, it brings the vendors in, but I don't think that ever brought anything of value.
I happen to agree. The ROI on the money, the outlay that's put into, and the effort put into attending these great meetings, and they are great meetings. We're talking about the ACC or the HRS, and some of the smaller chapters around the nation. I mean, it's just you could. It's a full-time job to try to attend all of these rather than just boots on the ground.
Those big companies, they got a full-time division. All they do is run those campaigns. So, they're doing it. So it's one of those things where the other guy's doing it, so I better do it. If I don't do it and something goes wrong, we're in trouble. So let's just do it anyway. So that's how I see it. If I was in that big corporate, would I do it? Absolutely, I would do it. Just because the other guy's doing it, right? So, so I'm not faulting them for doing it, but the question is, how effective is it?
So because you've been in the industry often, what do you think most MedTech companies get wrong when they're trying to build awareness, trust with either the physicians, patients, and investors?
In my opinion, I think the companies believe that their product is best when it's not. I think we're living in an ultra competitive environment. I don't think one product is so good that it would render other company obsolete. No such thing exists. So at that point, it becomes, am I wasting physicians' time and patients' time? Am I bringing any value to them? I can have the greatest product, but if you're spending one whole day to deliver for one patient, it's not going to work. So it really comes down to, am I bringing value to the patients and physicians? That's how I see it.
So where do you think, with that said, where do you think Future Cardia stands from a positioning standpoint, do you think it's a great product?
It is but yes, but so is everybody else.
So I think what you're saying is it's about patient profiles.
Yeah,
What's going to be best?
right. Let's use a pacemaker for example. Let's say you're a Joe. You are a hardcore Medtronic lover, and your father got a Boston Scientific device in San Diego. You will be perfectly fine, and you'll be happy that he got a Boston Scientific device. So that pretty much sums it up. Even though let's say you're a true lover, you own stocks at Medtronic and you worked at Medtronic, all your friends are at Medtronic, and your father got a Boston Scientific device, you're not going to ask him to take it out and put a Medtronic device tomorrow. You're going to be perfectly fine, and you're going to make friends with Boston Scientific reps so they can treat your father well.
You know, Jay, I think that level of awareness is incredibly powerful because once you understand that, you're not blinding yourself to what technology is out there. You're just enhancing what's there to help any and all of those different profiles around, that we see, patient profiles. And there are different products that are best for different patients, right? So having that level of awareness is something that is not only incredibly mature, but it's something that I'm sure contributed to the success of where you are today. So I'm glad to hear that. A lot of young sales folks think that they have the best thing out there and that every other product sucks. And the honest fact, the truth there is that you need to have awareness, understand what the market has, and how your product is positioned there. And that's really how you find success in sales, right? And that's a whole different topic we could go into. But let's keep it here with Future Cardia. So exciting things happening next year. You're thinking about commercialization. Should everything go well, from a sales perspective, will you be hiring around the nation? Will you be focused on a particular market? How's that going to look?
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one because in my industry, I'm sure it's true for all industries, the sales deployment is very costly and time consuming. So, and when we look at some of the companies that have $50 million funding, $100 million in funding just for that operation, they can deploy their sales reps even before fully train them up to clearance and then let the sales rep run. That would be one of the most unique and rare cases, right? So most of us do not have that luxury. We do have advantage because we are leveraging existing pacemaker reps. So these are not the guys that goes and drop off samples and leave. These are the guys that are in the OR, truly a clinical and business partner to the physician and the patients and the clinic. So we're going to leverage these guys, and they will not win every account. We're going to be very resourceful and bring huge value to these patients and physicians, and tackle smaller accounts here and there. It doesn't work if you're selling a $500 product. You just can't. But it works if you're selling a $5,000 product, and it's an outpatient on top.
So utilizing industry experts already in the field with great relationships sounds like an incredible start. As you look beyond that, will you be focused on, bringing in more capital, raising more money, and scaling up through that effort rather than through the kind of the grassroots of the industry experts? And how much money do you think you would need, Future Cardia, in order to scale nationally?
Well, that is also a tough situation, tough question, because most of our type of operations get acquired if we do well, right? The acquisition usually happens during the submission and approval, and what we call honeymoon stage. Having said that, I look at companies like Abiomed that slowly grew aggressively, but they grew on their own. And in the past 10, 15 years, I think they had an offer every year. And they said, I think we're okay. We're not making crazy money, but we're doing okay to be self-sufficient and continue to bring value to patients and physicians. And that's how they did it. And in the end, we know what the exit was. It's a $16 billion exit. So I my goal with Future Cardia is to be sustainable. I know it's such a overused word, but living within your means, don't get in debt, don't try to expand when you can't, and borrow more money and things like that. So just continue to grow. And as we grow, things will get very attractive. And no, we will never have 300 sales reps. We don't have that capability. Uh, but, we can start with 5 and then 10, 15, 20, and continue to grow the company that way. And if the right offer comes in that can take us to the next level, absolutely, that it becomes a very attractive proposition.
Sounds like strong advice for anyone, watching. Yes.
I think a lot of companies would say, well, we're going to go all in on approval and we're going to hope for the best. That's not what we're going to do. We're going to get the approval and we're going to continue to sell, even if it's first dollar, we're going to slowly build up on that and continue to bring value.
Well, I'm glad to hear. And for much of that advice there, I think it's like slow and steady. You slowly have to grow. You learn from what those few steps are, and then you strengthen the company. And along the way, you have many discussions with competitors and interested buyers alike. And that's eventually how those exits happen, right? And I wish you all the best with that. So as we come to the end of this, I usually like to ask, if you think about the road that you've taken, where you're at now, where you're heading, what are the final few messages you'd like for anyone watching? Even if it's about patient care, it's about development, personal development, business development. Just want to leave you with a few minutes to share.
Yeah, boy, that's a tough one, Joe. I don't know. I mean, I had a really great job that I loved. Medtronic was one of my favorite jobs. CVRX, I learned a lot. Abiomed was truly the EBR systems was a truly a dream job for me. The founder is somebody that I admire deeply, and he actually sent me a job offer when I was on the day of my graduation at the executive MBA program. Whether it was a coincidence or intentional, I don't know, but I remember me and my wife was in tears. That's how grateful we were, and worked for a legendary CEO with 15 exits, and under him there was like 23 CEOs came under him. I raised my hand and confronted these guys. Things that I didn't like, what worked and what didn't, while other guys kind of said everything's perfect. As long as I keep you happy, I don't care about everybody else. That kind of mentality. So I call it a weasel and shit show. Don't be part of that. Don't be part of that.
Well, I think that comes back to your earlier comment about don't manage up, be who you are. And really, what I get from you is someone who's just happy and loves what they do. And if that's the takeaway, what I'm hearing, and I know it's very easily said, love what you do, but when you truly have a love for your work, your personal life, your professional life, as well as the road that you set yourself on, really improves.
Yeah.
And it's all about finding that peace and love in your day to day.
And be resourceful, be greedy, make a decision, and have the strength to say, "Oh, I was wrong. Let's change it. Let's do it this way." And my meetings are like that. I have great guys that I work with, and they disagree with me all the time, and I love it. That at least that allows us to find the problem and fix it. And if that's the wrong fix it again. So that would be my thing. Just be direct, transparent, straightforward, with respect, of course. You don't want to be rude to other people, but that's it. And then foster the relationship. The vendors that I work with are my true partners. They help me tremendously. of course, I pay them, but they help me. They go out of their way to help me, and that's really important to me. So a lot of the contractors that I work with, I consider them as a friend, and just continue to build a relationship and have fun together and grow together.
Excellent advice, Jay. You know, we're going to be rooting for Future Cardia. We'll keep an eye on for your approval, your submission, and then hopefully your commercial plan if it's not, if you don't go through an exit before that. But thank you so much for being on Rounds and enlightening us with you know, your career path, how you got to where you are, and some of that great advice. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, Joe.